Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners, Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But know what we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 23rd, 2020. Well, Portes, Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's a challenging and depressing time in the sports world when you look at it in totality. Today was supposed to have been the opening ceremony of the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And yet the sports world has been put on pause, so we'll have no 2020 Olympics game, and so many athletes who prepared for that around the world, Charlton, are being left out of consideration for those medals they fight so hard for every 4 years.
They do.
Also want to say thank you and stay safe to our first responders, nurses, doctors, and healthcare workers out there, Charlton.
Well, Big C, they need our support and prayers, but they really need those materials that they need to keep people safe. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sport Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear, welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as a mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Spotify. I really appreciate that. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there at a still picture. Man, I told you, Big C, I've been working on my pause, and I've been pausing better. Golfers always say there's something about breathe. You gotta learn to breathe right when you hit a golf ball, and I'm starting to understand that. But I'll never pause on our Veterans Crisis Hotline, Big C. They really are experienced in helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, we've got to get the country to give more consideration to our veterans, Charlton, that have returned home from their armed services, as we lose some 22 veterans a day to suicide. And I know a lot of people think that's a minuscule number compared to what's going on with COVID-19, but, Charlton, these are people who have served admirably in our country.
Yeah.
We lose these veterans to suicide, but we're also losing veterans to COVID-19, Charlton. Many of our veterans are homeless and destitute, and you know, their home is a sidewalk or underneath the bridge. They've been forgotten about entities in the United States. And we, as a country, as a government, needs to give more consideration and love to those people who have fought so admirably for us. We give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need all of America to take part in that.
Yeah, all we can do is do our part, and we'll keep doing it. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And they say, hey, kid, just tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple. Recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships, and yes, sports teams are doing it too. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. 800-772-8624 for opportunities and real estate. Go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see about opportunities in real estate. Really appreciate that, Big C. You know, I was just thinking, as you mentioned, it slipped my mind, because we would have been talking about the Olympic ceremony, where we see people from all over the world that work so hard and train so hard just so they can go on and do their thing in front of the whole world. But just like everything else in life, Big C, it's on the pause too, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, yes, it's on the pause, but also, Charlton, today is the opening day of the Major League Baseball season. You got the season kicking off tonight with the Washington Nationals, the defending World Series champion, versus the New York Yankees, the Bronx Bombers, Charlton. They're opening up in the nation's capital. It seems odd, you have a baseball game going on that's fanless. I mean, it's hard to get emotionally drawn to that event, Charlton, because all you're getting, it seems like a practice that the players are going to go through.
Yeah.
And, fanfare in sporting events, live sporting events, is what gives the players the juice.
Yeah, it really does. It reminds me, I think there was a game last year, and it may have been in Baltimore, and I think they had less than 1,000 fans. So they may have seen that something was coming, and they were already doing a rehearsal for it, Big C. I did see some of the Washington Nationals and the New York Yankees try to do their thing. And it's just, we just got to make the most of it. It's like when I was a little kid growing up, you said, I don't want to eat my peas. And Mama said, you're going to eat it, and you're going to enjoy it. And boy, did she know I would enjoy it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I always enjoyed peas, Charles, especially when you had the mashed potatoes. I really enjoy that combination still today as an adult. But, I mean, as you look at these games, and we've become so conditioned over the years as fans throughout the world to be involved in the sporting event, being inside the arena or the stadium, getting rid of all those endorphins out of your body. And players feed off of that. So it's going to take some time to get used to from everyone, whether, you're sitting down listening on the radio or watching on television. To see that game and feel emotionally drawn to it.
Yeah. You look at the Yankees at Washington, Garrett Cole on the mound, and Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer has different color eyes, Big C, and I thought maybe he had contact, but it's just the way, nature routes sometimes. And then when San Francisco travels down to the Dodger Stadium, it's going to be Johnny Cueto and Dustin May. There's a good boy that said he didn't want to pitch. I guess he hurt his back, Big C. I guess he remembered what happened last year in the World Series and decided he didn't want to pitch tonight. But I hope he's okay. That makes sense for the Dodgers. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as you look at these players are figuring out what's good for them in the long run. They're trying to figure out if their health is going to be long-term effects on it from this COVID-19. They really haven't figured out what's going to happen to the players that are in the stadium. Even though you practice social distancing, you must wear a mask when you're in the dugout. But when you're at bat, at home plate, there's three people there within feet of each other. No one is wearing a protective mask, Charlton. None of the infielders, outfielders are wearing them. So, it's really not a 100% safety environment.
Yeah, and Clayton Kershaw knows what he's doing, Big C. He waited till you ever go to somebody's house for dinner and they say, we're sorry, but the macaroni tastes all like wood and the cheese sauce came out bad. That makes sense to you?
Well, Kershaw looks at the overall longevity of the year. And this is a 60-game season that people are looking at, something that's going to burn through real quick. And, he knows that he's in an environment which is one of the hottest pandemic spots in America, in Southern California. Orange County actually is the epicenter in California right now. So, a lot of the veteran players, and they look at what their home environment is. People just want to think about the player, and is the player healthy? This player has to go back home to an environment, Charlton, where people are not self-quarantined. Wherever he's been out in public, he's going back to those loved ones, whether they're children, their spouse, there's parents or extended family that may live with some of these players. And that's their major concern. What is the overall effect going to be with the people that are in the household?
And they say he hurt himself lifting weights before you get warmed up to pitch. I don't know, a lot of guys can say what they want to say, but I've never heard of a baseball player in the weight room before he gets out to pitch on the mound. Normally they're stretching, not trying to bench 300 pounds, but it's all fair love and war. I do want to get your thoughts on something. Nothing's really normal. LeBron James was saying that. A lot of people said nothing's normal, Big C. But Major League Baseball players, they have agreed to expand the playoffs to 16 teams as opposed to 10 just for the pandemic-delayed season. And I think it's just to get more people around the country involved in the game of NBA, of Major League Baseball. I think is a good thing. What could be bad about it, if you have let's say the Yankees and the Dodgers finish in the top of the divisions, and then they have to play a number 8 seed, Big C, that shouldn't even have a reason to be in the playoffs, but they're going to expand it some. Maybe they'll start putting every team in the playoffs, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what you're realistically looking at in an expansion of the playoffs and ball is an opportunity to add more advertising revenue.
Yep.
But also, you need to have 2 great pitchers when you get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so it could equal an even playing surface when you get to the playoffs. You can have an 8 seed, Charlton, in the playoffs, and they have 2 dominant starters, which is all you need. They can knock off a number 1 and number 2 seed.
Yeah, we saw last year Oakland got into the playoffs by the skin of their teeth. They were knocked out by Tampa, but still, it's all about the teams that get hot, and you have the pitching. So they're thinking about 16 of the 30 teams. That's more than half the league. I can count 16 of 30 teams is more than half the teams make the playoffs. Does that make sense? More than half the people that run a race get to compete for a championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the biggest problem with that, you got to be, if you're one of those 14 teams that don't make the playoffs, you got to explain to everybody why.
Yeah, you got to explain to everybody why, especially when they want you to buy tickets. So they're going to have it, the first and second place teams in every division, and the next 2 clubs by winning percentage in each league. Those winners are going to move on best of 5 series, and where the usual format resumes, Big C. But as you know, they got to find a way to get money. And if things don't turn around by the later year, they may have some type of a meeting to add 24 teams into the playoffs, if that makes sense to you. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, what I think about Port Charlton is it may end up canceling. You know, as they look at starting up all of these sports right now, and we look at the rising of COVID-19 in America, Charlton, there's nowhere that you can ensure the safety and health of any of these athletes in any sport, high school, collegiate, or professional. And as the rampant rise of COVID-19, look at the states as where it's really rising. I mean, as Major League Baseball is starting tonight.
Yeah.
You look at California with its multiple teams. You look at Arizona that has teams. You look at Texas with multiple teams. You look at Florida with multiple teams. States that are going rampant as far as COVID-19, Charlton, they have multiple collegiate, high school, and professional teams. And there's no way that you can control this COVID-19 at the rate it's rising.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that any of these seasons will ever be completed this year.
Yeah, that's what I think that's what we're going to see, because science hasn't gone away. Only thing that's changed is some of these good boys are figuring out how to get their money. Before I get onto some things that I think are serious, I want to discuss them. POTUS, this is what I say. I mean, everybody has their own thoughts, and that's okay. No one has to agree with anything I say, which I'm not. That's not new. Sometimes a lot of people don't agree with anything I say, Big C. Mariano Rivera, New York Yankees great, considered maybe one of the greatest closers of all time, 5 World Series championships. Well, he was at the White House today with POTUS for a photo op, and there had some kids behind him, white kids, okay? I'm saying it for a reason. They had some white kids behind them throwing baseballs, because that's America's favorite pastime, especially for the kids, basically, the kids out there playing baseball. But Mariano Rivera, when you think about him, and he looks like what POTUS called the Brown Menace. There was never any talk about the thousands of migrants that he called the Brown Menace, yet POTUS showed a lot of praise for Mariano Rivera, who's from Panama, and he said that he's so proud to know him, and he's a good man, but he looks like the same kid. He could be the father of those kids. There's thousands of kids that chain at POTUS' grandstanding. He wouldn't go to the ballpark, but he stood in the back of the White House and talking to Mariano Rivera. And Mariano, not that he has to know politics at all, but I just thought it was a shame that he's praising a man that looks like the guys or the kids that he's detained over, thousands of them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if he's going to do anything, Austin, he should let the public know that there's still thousands of children locked up in cages down on the southern border and in other states that he took away from their parents, Charlton, separated these families, basically kidnapped these kids. Not grandstand with a former major leaguer, Charlton, but be honest with the American public about the atrocity that he committed here in the United States.
I know, and that's why I thought, see, maybe I look too deep into things, but when all that I can see with my eyes and the eyeball test, maybe I couldn't see everything, but it looks like they were all white kids throwing the baseball around on the White House lawn. People say, well, what's that?
You got to understand, Trump doesn't know any Negro kids. He don't have any in his cabinet, so he doesn't know where they are.
He found a man with brown skin, Mariano Rivera. He said, that'll do. They all look alike, from what I understand from what I've been in the past. But I thought the optics was really sad that here he is with Mariano Rivera saying, I respect you as a player. You're one of the greatest of all time. But kids who look like they come from you are locked up.
He said he respects him as a player. He didn't say he respects him as a person, as a Latin American. He said he respects him as a player. So sometimes someone's words speak for themselves. He's telling you that he's a racist, and he respects you as a player, not as a man, not as a person, not as a Latin American.
Yeah, and I just thought that was sad. At least bring a couple of brown-skinned kids, too, and welcome them to throw the baseball around, but he may have detained them, so maybe those kids read a lot more than Mariano Rivera, but it's all fair, love, and war. I want to get to something that some people think is painful, and that's fine. Sometimes life is painful, Big C, but it's just conversation. And I think about this when I go out running in the cold, and even tell my son. But you think about hoodies and the lawsuits and the protests, basketball, decades of fighting racism, basketball's ongoing fight for social justice, the NBA, WNBA's actions against racial inequality. It did start with this year's protest, and it won't end here either, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it won't, Charlton. This is a long struggle and battle that Negroes have faced in America, seems like forever, for the eternity of the country. And as everybody's saying that, I thought about William Barr when you said that, Charlton. Yesterday, he said that this Black Lives Matter movement is too harsh. You think about that. What are they trying to prove? That this is what the Attorney General of the United States said in a backhanded quotation to Black Lives Matter, saying he doesn't give a damn about it, basically.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't matter to the majority of Americans. We've heard that from, WNBA team owners. We hear that all the time. It's just like when people will say, okay, why should I have to pay reparations? I didn't own slaves. Well, you didn't have to own slaves, but you still perpetuate the cause that slavery stood for.
Yeah. And a lot of people won't give back the money that's been bequeathed for centuries, Big C. But it's going to happen. Reparations will sweep across this country. We're just going to have to get a different administration. But I want to also, I'm just going to throw some thoughts out. You give me your feeling on it. That evolution that became clear, I think it was March of 2012 with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and then their Miami Heat teammates. They posed with some hoodies. It was for a photo op in the hashtag We Are Trayvon Martin in memory of the Florida team who had been killed a month earlier. And for some reason, people were trying to act like, well, he must have done something wrong, BC. Your thoughts?
Charlton, that's always been the moniker against the black youth when he's been gunned down by someone who looks like a white person in America, Charlton, is that it's acceptable for this white person to kill this black person because there's no reason why he would have killed him if he hadn't been doing something wrong. But this was a young man who was headed back home, who lost his life just because he was walking back home, and a guy thought to take law into his hands, just like we saw in Georgia several months back when the Ahmaud Arbery was gunned down by some white vigilantes who felt that they could be law enforcement and go kill a man in the middle of the street in broad daylight. So.
Yeah, that's horrible. And, it makes me think, I even tell my son, I had hoodies when I played football back in the day. Bill Belichick always has a hoodie on the sideline, but I doubt if he's ever had to think twice about walking down the street as a white man in Boston with a hoodie on his head to keep himself cool, Big C, or keep himself warm. He never had to think about that. But I want to go to 2014. The Los Angeles Clippers, they staged a protest against Donald Sterling. If you recall, after an audio tape surfaced, it was the team's owner, Donald Sterling, that made a racist remark to his girlfriend, and that the players dropped their warm-up jackets at center court and the war on shooting shirts inside of out. They wanted to talk about 2 days later, the NBA had a ban on Sterling for life, which it seems like he didn't do anything much different than the New York Jets owner, Woody Johnson, I believe, Big C, and a couple other people also. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the contrast of the actions of the NBA, Charlton, and the stances their players took, is that we will not tolerate this in unison. And Donald Sterling lost his NBA franchise.
Yeah.
Now, you bring that years later to right now in New York, where the owner of the New York Jets, Woody Johnson, has done the same thing and probably even more heinous than what Donald Sterling did with the Los Angeles Clippers. And you think of the complacency of the NFL owners, Charlton, and the commissioner, as far as saying, "Oh, we got to look into this." Look at what they did to Antonio Brown on an allegations of sexual misconduct.
Yeah.
And yet you have an owner who has gone up and above that. But it should not hit anybody by surprise. Look at what Robert Kraft did last year in his sexual innuendos that he did down in Florida.
Yeah.
And you know, all of a sudden he's still in the league. No reprimand against him, no suspension. So it's a different scale as far as white men in America and black in America of how they're treated justly and unjustly, Charlton, by those superiors above them.
Yeah, that tends to be the case, and we have seen that for many years. I think it was 2014. This was across the league where a lot of people wore "I Can't Breathe" shirts, and those were the last words of Eric Gardner, who passed away July of 2014, and that was a New York City police officer placed him in a chokehold, which is, they're still fighting to outlaw chokeholds. And Nancy Pelosi was saying they want to get that sign as part of police reform. That's part of what the Black Lives Matter movement, that's one of the conditions they're asking for, that Black Lives Matter outlaw the chokehold. It's not used on white kids. They don't go into the suburbs and put white kids who are acting up or need some type of discipline. They don't put them in a chokehold. They send those kids to counseling. Big C, your thoughts?
Isn't it amazing, Charlton, year after year we keep going back to the same words? I can't breathe. Why are you choking him like that? You know, let him up. You know, the same thing that happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd happened, you know, half a decade earlier with Eric Gardner in New York. A black man standing there peacefully on the sidewalk, and yet you have white officers that have the power to take a man's life who is unarmed, who is not a physical threat to anybody, Charlton.
Yeah.
But you do this. The black race in America has been undermined constantly. It's beneath everybody. And you don't put value on black lives if you're a white male in power. You don't put value on their lives. Is that you can do anything to, because if that had been Eric Gardner choking a dog on the street in New York, Charlton,
yeah,
he would have been shot by those white police officers.
Isn't that something? The guy Michael Vick went to prison because he was hanging around with some guys that were dog fighting and killing dogs. And you still have the guys who killed Breonna Taylor. And, you know, it's happened over the country. They're still going to court on some issues. But killing dogs gets you 2 years in a federal penitentiary. And he wasn't even the dog fighter. Just some of his friends did it, Big. So you have men who have murdered men on film, on camera, and they still get off. It doesn't make any sense. But I think also 2015, New York police, there was another citizen that I believe when the Atlanta Hawks suffered a season-ending injury at the hands of an NYPD, he sued and received $4 million in a settlement, which is a substantial portion, which he donated to charity. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that was Cecil Sefolosha, Charlton. He was a forward with the Atlanta Hawks. The team was in town on a road game. He was at a nightclub. He comes out of the nightclub, and he's standing outside to get some air, and he's attacked by several police officers, Charlton.
Yeah.
He's beaten. His wrist is broken, plus suffered a knee injury in this attack, this violent attack by these police officers, Charlton. Just being a black man standing on a sidewalk. They said they thought he was a drug dealer because he walked outside the club. And NBA players have a lot of money. They can wear any type of clothes and wear any type of jewelry that they want to, Charlton. But he was attacked while being black. You think about the fear of black men in America, that when you stand on a sidewalk after exiting a nightclub and you're not posing a threat to anybody, that you're attacked while being black. And it's hard for white people to understand that. Why black people have such an animosity against white society. These are the reasons that you're a professional athlete. And this is not the only professional athlete that's been attacked by police, Charlton, while being black.
Yeah, it tends to happen. I just, for call a media equal time, when you start seeing that type of killing of white children, then people will say, well, maybe he did something wrong. He had to do something wrong. We just don't see it, Big C. 2015, Carmelo Anthony, he led a protest, I believe in Baltimore, Maryland, Big C, and he said that we need to protect our city, not destroy it. And Carmelo Anthony wrote an impressive post. It was on Instagram, I believe it was April of 2015, as his hometown of Baltimore riots and following the funeral fray of African-American man who also died of spinal cord and other injuries suffered while also in police custody. And I juxtapose this to the kid that shot up the church and murdered 9 people as they were in prayer service, and they took him to McDonald's to get something to eat. And then you have a young African-American man who was in police custody, and he happened to pass away. I guess they put him in the back of the squad car. It wasn't a car, kind of a van. But whatever happened, they didn't take him to McDonald's. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they cuffed up Freddie Graves on the street, Charlton. They hog-tied him. They put him in the back of a police van. And they took a long, rough ride around the city prior to taking him to the police station. They did not secure him in a seat with a seatbelt.
No.
And so he was in the back of this metal van. Every time he came on the brakes or go over a bump, he was tossed around inside this where he could not protect him with his hands cuffed behind his back, Charlton. Eventually, he suffered a broken neck in this ride to the police station before they took him to the hospital. He eventually lost his life from respiratory problems, Charlton. But this was a heinous murder by the Baltimore police. And they were all acquitted in this situation, Charlton.
Yep.
So when you think about the devaluing of the life of a Negro by law enforcement, and people still want to be mad at the Black Lives Matter protest that's been going on for 56 days in America since the George Floyd murder, there is a history of animus, from Negroes in America towards law enforcement. This is the normal modus operandi of law enforcement. And you even had a president say, when you put them in the car, rough them up. Don't be so kind to them. And we see this over and over decades of treatment towards Negroes in America, that they lose their lives from the people who swore to serve and protect you.
Yeah.
So why can't you be hostile and angry towards the police when it comes to the Negro community?
Yeah, and they call one a terrorist group asking for justice, liberty, and justice for all. They're called a terrorist group, but the people that rough you up when they're just supposed to be protecting and serving, they're called good people. 2015, Minnesota Lynx had a player that wore a Black Lives Matter shirt. The night before, I think it was Austin Sherling that had been killed by police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in the same neighborhood where Lynx guard Simone Augustus grew up. Big C, also your thoughts?
Well, here was a young man, Charlton, that was running away, and he was shot in the back several times by the police. This is something that the police have to get over with. When a subject is fleeing, that means he's not posing a threat to you.
Right.
We saw that same incident a month ago in Atlanta when there was a subject fleeing and the police decided to shoot him in the back, saying that he felt threatened of his life by this man running away from him as he was chasing him.
Yeah.
And so the police have always got that autonomy and the benefit of the doubt, because a dead man can't speak, Charlton. He can't say that's not what happened.
No, he
that's
can't.
That's not the reason why you shot me.
Yep.
And so the police have felt free to kill people, Charlton, to avoid having somebody to testify against them. And the majority of these people we see killed now, because everybody has a studio in their hand with these cellular devices.
Yeah.
Everything is being recorded, as well as security cameras. And the thing about it, just like when we saw Rodney King back in 1992, the police have proven to you that film lies. You cannot believe what your eyes are telling you.
Yeah.
There has to be another story. And white society has gotten to the point where we don't know what happened prior to seeing the camera start. Well, you've seen the camera start from start to finish now.
Yeah.
So there's really no excuse, but they still try to say, well, there had to be something else beyond what we saw at that point.
Yeah, and before we take the Big C timeout, I remember those officers in Los Angeles, they moved the trial up to Simi Valley, and an all-white jury saw the beatdown on videotape that lasted about 12 minutes, and they said not guilty. We'll take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. There's so many applications you can follow. I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. 2016, Big C. In 2016, NBA players, they opened the ESPYs with a speech against violence. You know, the name violence, the speech against violence that Black Lives Matter is trying to bring attention to things so we can end it. It was Carmelo Anthony. It was Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James. They were using the opening moments of the 2016 ESPYs as a call to promote social change, Big C. And they're still asking for the same thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as we look over the years, Charlton, as black athletes who seem to be a huge voice in America, ask for social change and recognition for the respect of black lives through law enforcement and white society. Year after year, we're going through the same thing. These men, Charlton, were down in Florida when Trayvon Martin was murdered down in Florida just for walking home back to his dad's condo.
Yeah.
And they've witnessed this over and over the years, that black lives do not matter when it comes to law enforcement in the mainstream white society. Is that the excuse is made that that Negro had done something that allowed or forced that white person to kill him. But, you know, I've often asked the question in all of my years around Charlton, how would society feel if black people started shooting white people at the rate that white people shoot black people? How would society feel? Would gun laws change at that point?
I think it would, Big C. And I don't know if it's ever going to be a challenge to the Second Amendment. That's just my opinion. I think everyone should have a gun. I grew up with them. It makes you feel a lot safer, but that's my opinion. In 2016, in a fever, they kneeled during the national anthem as a Star Spangled Banner was being performed at half court. And everyone, I think, in the 12 Fever player locker room, they locked arms and they dropped to a knee. I think that was the first time a professional team did that in Union, Big C. Your thoughts?
And think about what that cause was led by, Charlton, what has led black society for many years. Black women. There were all 12 black women who took a knee in solidarity to support Black Lives Matter. These are women who have mothers and potentially will be mothers in the future, understanding the hardships that their children would potentially go through. And they were trying to bring social awareness to that cause, Charlton, that men has been trying to bring also.
Yeah.
But black women were the first team in all solidarity to do that in America.
Yeah, I've always thought I would love to hear more African American women given the chance to speak up on TV and platforms, etc. But they're just like anything else. They get as ostracized as anybody else. Big C. 2017, the Lakers, they locked arms during an anthem at a preseason game to show unity, Big C. I think 6 days after dozens of NFL players kneeled for the anthem in protest of President Donald Trump's comments that players should do so or be fired, that there would be no need in the NBA, and they did it anyway, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, in the NBA, they have bylaws written in, and this was long before all the protests had started, John, that there's no kneeling during the national anthem or sitting down. Abdul Mahmoud Rauf, who used to play for the Denver Nuggets, former SU player, Charlton, started that back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
When he would sit down during the national anthem because of his Muslim beliefs, Charlton. So the NFL put in a bylaw throughout the league that there's no sitting or kneeling during the national anthem.
Right.
But these players showed another form of unity, Charlton, by locking arms. Both benches did it, Charlton. It wasn't just the one side. Both benches did it during that game.
Yeah, and just like my lawyer friend, you know, there's so many things that I'm learning also. We spend a lot of time talking instead of filing documents in the court, and things change when you file documents in the court. And this is something also that's pertinent to what she was telling me. 2018, Milwaukee Police Department, Big C, they tased Sterling Brown. When the Milwaukee Bucks guard, Sterling Brown, he became a victim of police brutality in 2018. It once again shined a light on the widespread issue. I think he was just going to a store to get some cough medicine. And I think he had parked his Escalade, and he didn't. They say he double parked, so therefore they need to tase him. You know how many people double park, Big C, and don't get tased, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Sterling Brown double parked at 1:30 in the morning outside a convenience store, as you said, going in to get some over-the-counter cough medicine for an illness that he was coming down with. 1:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't think that you got busy parking lots at 1:30 in the morning in Milwaukee or any major city in America, especially at a overnight drugstore, CVS or something along that line, so. But here's once again that white cops are abusing their power. He wasn't being obnoxious. He wasn't being rude. He came back out. He apologized. That wasn't enough for the white officer.
Yeah.
Here was an imposing black man who stood 6'5", and so he felt in fear of his safety because this black man at 6'5" at 1:30 in the morning was standing over him.
Yeah.
So this is something that I always talk about when I say about the Black Lives Matter sign, is that they want them beneath them, Charlton. Everything about black, white will want beneath them, so they're hovering above it. And that's what this white officer felt about Sterling Brown. Well, you're too tall, so you need to bow down. So I'm going to tase your black butt and put you beneath me to let you know that I'm in control.
Yeah, and I say there's some because there's a lot of people that don't have that thought, but it sure seems to be a lot that we've seen.
We can never say everybody has a thought, Charlton, but when you see a repetitive action from the same type of people, there's enough of them that have that thought to make society bad.
Yeah, but it's going to take them who have that thought, that look like that, to help change. If they don't like you, why would they listen to what you got to say? It's going to take decent white Americans to talk to the bad ones, Big C.
It's going to take those who don't have that thought to make a change. Why are they hesitating in making the change then, Charlton? Why are they not rooting out the bad people that look like them? It's easy to say that's a bad black person. We're going to lock him up. Why don't those good white people who know who those bad white people are get rid of them? Why is it taking 400 years for those good white people to get rid of the bad white people? And these things still expand today.
I still think it's going to take good people, Big C. I mean, it may take longer. It may take more than our lifetime. I'm sure people who were dealing with slavery, if they could juxtapose and look into the future to what we deal with now, they would trade places in a minute. There's good and bad in all people. It's the activity, to me, not skin color. But I want to go to 2019. There was in Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, there's a fan who directed some pretty racist spots at Russell Westbrook, considered verbal abuse of players. I think it reached a breaking point in 2019. And I believe that fan has been banned for life. He just changed his name and get in, though. But I think he's been banned for life. And sometimes it just feels like people they got to get the knuckleheads out of the gyms, out of the arenas. And I think that's what they made the attempt to do in Utah. But we don't know if it's being reinforced or not, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I remember at the time when that occurred that the center for the Utah Jazz, Rudy Gobert, said many times playing in the arena felt like being at a zoo and being hackled and yelled at, racial epithets thrown at you. Charlton, this has always existed in professional sports. Back decades ago when I was playing, I dealt with racial epithets all the time. I dealt with them from fans. I dealt with them from opposing coaches. This is something that's been normal criteria for white people in America to denigrate Negro athletes. You go back to the integration of sports. Negroes have always felt this vitriol from white fans in whatever arena or stadium that they played in, from the 40s, Charlton, on up to now, in the 2020s.
Yeah.
Negro athletes deal with it from coaches. They deal with it from opposing players. They deal with it from fans. This is a part of American society. It's always feel that Negro is beneath you and that you can denigrate them all that you want. Yes, you love them when they're out there playing, but you don't want to be dealing or interacting with them when they're not on the playing field.
Yeah, it reminds me of POTUS had the interview today with Mariano Rivera. They didn't wear a mask. They're about 5 feet apart. And Mariano Rivera looks like the Central Park 5 profile that POTUS wanted the death penalty for. He also looked like the applicants they marked C on their application for their housing lawsuit when he was sued by the Justice Department for not renting apartments to black Americans. But it just sticks in my mind that for white kids in the background throwing baseballs around, but he was interviewing the black hero, or at least with black skin, Mariano Rivera, and interviewing the hero, saying, I respect you, I'm proud of you, one of the best I've ever seen, but you can't rent an apartment for me. That's just my opinion. 2020, nationwide protest, really a worldwide protest over the killing and the murder of George Floyd, Big C, after the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, multiple players across the league and really around the world, they led participations in nationwide and worldwide protests. It's really a worldwide thing as police brutality. And when people say Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group, no, they're saying let's stop terrorizing people. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as you think about it, Charlton, this is the 56th day since the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, and the protests are still going on. There is a movement that has gathered late in America and as well as around the world. But hopefully with what's going on in America now, Charlton, because it is driven by white kids, white citizens in society, that the rest of society will understand that this is not just a one-sided ordeal, is that there are white people in America that are upset and angered over the treatment of Negroes in America.
Yeah.
They've witnessed it long enough. They've heard all the stories from their parents and grandparents of how bad the Negroes did in America, and they wouldn't have got treated that way if they didn't deserve it.
Yeah.
But I think now that the intelligence of the young white people in America, Charlton, said they didn't deserve it. Humanity is what we deserve in this country. And we can no longer sit around and be complacent to the evilness that white people have been doing for decades in America to Negroes. And the only way that it's going to change, as you say about those good white people, Charlton, is that they stand up against those bad white people and make a difference.
And I think they have, and that's the same thing that I talk about, because we don't have the days of Governor Wallace. Segregation now, segregation forever. I'll never tolerate integration, Big C. And it took a lot of young white kids to change. No matter how much, we still are not the dominant society as a group of African Americans. And no matter how much we march, no matter how much we plead, what changes the law is going to court. But what changes the heart is having someone who looks just like you saying, you know what, Dad, that's not right. You know what, Grandma, Grandpa, that's not right. You're wrong. And I think more of that's happened, at least in my lifetime, where people have said, I'm going to share something with you. It may take 30 seconds. When I went to college, and even before that, but primarily in college, there were people that wanted to interact with me, but they said, you know what, I can't have you meet my parents because they won't approve of it. I said, what would they not approve of? You dating a man? And they said, no, they won't approve of it because you're black. And I said, well, your parents need to know all life came from Africa. Because I know that. So I never felt like I was offended by it. I know that. But she, at the same time, would say, well, you know what? It's easy to say that, but I got to live with those people. But I think a lot more people have changed to say, hey, if you don't respect black, then that's your loss, Big C. Does that make sense, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's always been like that for decades, even long before you came along. I mean, there was misogyny in American society as long as it was behind closed doors and where people could not see it. You just did not take it home with you.
Yeah.
And it still exists today in America. Don't think that people are still that open-minded that they'll accept whatever culture that comes to their house. They won't, because it's been bred for years within their cultures that separation is what you must have. You cannot have interracial relationships. And so there's been some breakthrough over the decades, but still not enough breakthrough over the decades. So that is the reason why racism exists in America.
Yeah.
You can have a few people think that way, but you don't have the mass majority that thinks that way. It's just like the owner of the Atlanta Dream, the WNBA team.
Yeah.
When she makes a statement, Kelly Lewis, she thinks that Black Lives Matter emblems on the players and the players promoting that will discourage some fans from coming to the game. And I don't know if she realizes that she's in Atlanta, one of the blackest cities in America.
Yeah.
And the team is all black. So I don't know which fans she thinks is going to disparage from coming to the game. But when you have a person that is a sitting senator in the United States, not only that, she's the co-owner of a WNBA team.
Yeah.
Saying that Black Lives Matter disparages white people. Think about that. Is that it is offensive to white people to make the statement or even have the emblem Black Lives Matter.
Well, it's not offensive to all white people because they're the majority of the leagues and the majority of the ones out marching in the street. And so I think, again, people come, they learn. I've known some black parents, too, that said, don't bring that white woman in my house. I mean, I've heard it from all sides, Big C. With the WNBA and the NBA season is set to restart in Florida, how will these African-American players and the rest of black in America, Big C, ever receive equality if we only talk about who won a game? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, sports is not the way that Negroes will achieve equality in America. That was proven when Jackie Robinson went to the major leagues, when he broke the color barrier. All he did was join a team. He did not join society, Charlton. And I believe that was in the late to mid-40s when Jackie Robinson did that. So you think about 75 years later, equality has not come about just because you're playing sports.
Yeah.
They will hire you to do the labor that they need done. That's the same thing they did after slavery. They hired you to do the labor that they needed done.
Yeah.
They will pay you a fair salary. That's what they do. But they do not incorporate you into society. And Negroes have fought against that, Charlton, ever since Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier.
Yeah.
We will accept you as long as you perform for us, all right? As long as you're being productive for us to make us money. That's as accepted as we want to have you in society. We've had 45 presidents in the United States. And Barack Obama was the first African-American president in the United States, number 44. Very articulate, intelligent, charismatic man. But you think how opposing white society was to him, Charlton. The fight that he had to fight internally in Washington to get anything to happen. He had a United States Senate and House that fought him every step of the way. Now, we were supposed to be Americans. We the people of the people, the preamble to the Constitution, that everybody was supposed to be equal. Here was the most powerful man in the world that was handcuffed by the country that he lived in and given the least amount of respect in the world by the country that he lived in. So when we ascend to the highest office in the land and we're still thought about as second-class citizens, I'm not sure that anything that an athlete can do, Charlton, can change societal thought.
Well, it took white Americans to elect President Barack Obama. There's people that are for him, people that are against him, and that's what I say it's not about
it's
color.
Those old white men that sit in the Senate and the Congress, Charlton, that were against him. He had young white America, just like we see in the protests that are going on in the streets of America now. That's young white America. They didn't have the power to control the purse when he was in the White House. You can elect him and get him in office, but it's those old white men that were in office when he was elected that are still in office now that he's gone 3.5 years, Charlton, that still have the power of the purse and still lead the racial divide in America.
Yeah, but not everybody buys into it, Big C. There's a lot of older white people that don't buy that garbage. That's why things are changing, because they're not a monolithic group. I want to bring up something that I think is important. There's a guy by the name of Rube Foster, a black man. He was born in 1879. Not long after slavery was abolished, Big C. Slavery was abolished 1865. 1879, he founded what's called the NNL, the National Negro League for Baseball. He helped grow franchises in different cities. He didn't blame white people. He didn't say, I can't because white people don't like me. The man was born not long after slavery ended. He created a league, Big C. And I think to me, Andrew Rube Foster is what they call him, but they call him Rube Foster. He was an American baseball player, a manager, and an executive of the Negro Leagues. He was even elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1981. He had the same challenge, actually more challenges than any black American to this day has. He didn't have the right to vote. He was doing it with Jim Crow. All the isms that you could claim about they don't want us to succeed, but his attitude was a little bit different than a lot of people now, Big C. He's considered a historian to have been perhaps the best African-American pitcher in the first decade of the 1900s. He founded and managed the Chicago American Giants, one of the most successful black baseball teams in the pre-integration era, and most notably, he organized the Negro League. It was called the Negro National League. And I think it's important that league lasted from 1920 to 1931, and with the Great Depression, a lot of things fell apart. But he didn't worry about what people thought about him. He knows that all life came from Africa too. So anyone that says, oh, we don't like black, they're just stupid. But he knew that. I think as we talk about sometimes, instead of complaining about the Rooney Rule and they won't give me a job and white people aren't fair or they won't rent to me, how about get your own stuff? And I'm not joking about it when I say the African American, and you brought it up and I was thinking about it, yeah, but how? I started doing some research. It's already happened. White men would not give Rube Foster a chance to own. He created his own league. He got a lot of black players together, and they created their own league, and sometimes their own championship games would have between 20 to 50,000 people. It was more successful than Major League Baseball at a time, Big C. What can young players learn from that instead of begging for the Rooney Rule, Big C, your thoughts?
They can't learn from it, Charlton, because they're not going to be prescient enough to go back and do the historical research on it. They're happy with the paychecks that they're getting now. It's easy. All they got to do is write their name to a piece of paper. They have no responsibility other than just themselves. So they're not looking back to the history to see what created America and American sports to be as strong as they are. Even you look at the industrial complex of America, Charlton. You look at the medical complex of America. It is laden with black history. What black creations have done to advance American society, to make life easy in modern day society in America, whether it's oiling of machines, Charlton, whether it's creating vaccines and certain types of surgery. It was created by Negro men of color, Charlton, but white society stole it. And I even tell people today, who in the hell think Ben Franklin was standing out there in the yard during the lightning storm, holding that tight with that belly on it? It was a slave doing that, Charlton, who discovered electricity. So you can say anything about America where we are. We never had the ability to own our patents, Charlton, prior to the mid-40s in America. White people stole every invention that black men came up with. And it went over and over. I mean, they would kill a black man to take his patent, Charlton. That's what they would do to become rich. So as we think about how our culture has been raped and pillaged over the decades and centuries here in America, black men have tried all the things. They've done that. The Negro Leagues, they created their own. White society has found ways to take it from them. You know, through collusion, Charlton, they've done that.
Yeah.
Just like when they disbanded the Negro League. It was about integration. It was about taking the money. Oh, well, you come sit in a nicer Major League stadium than you can in an old rickety, bench seats that are made out of wood out there in one of those Negro ballparks. But you've talked about the success of the Negro Leagues early on, Charlton, how they were more competitive than the National Leagues. And the white leagues would not play the Negro Leagues, Charlton, after in the 40s when the Negro Leagues beat the Yankees in back-to-back years after they won the World Series. One year they beat them 4-1. The other year they beat them 4-0.
Yeah, shut
no
them out.
longer would the white leagues play the Negro Leagues because they knew the superiority of the athletes, but they figured they needed to disband them and bring them over to their side.
Yeah, we've seen that happen and so many times. Even with that, there's only two people of color that own NFL franchises, one for the Buffalo Bills and then the other for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I still look going forward, there's always going to be people that have fear that something bad is going to happen to them, like the Black Wall Street. We know that happened in Oklahoma, Tulsa, but there was also a Black Wall Street in Sacramento. There was also one down in Los Angeles. It's happened all over the country. But all around the world, you think about two owners, minority, in the United States. And then you have Vince McMahon, that I think his net worth is only $2 billion. It might be less than that based on some publications that I read about. He created the XFL, and people came. The only reason it failed, I think, is because COVID-19 showed up. But as I always say, whether people are afraid that it won't happen or not, African-American athletes, at least in football alone, they would control with factoring over $100 billion. $100 billion. So when people are saying, oh, my God, this guy just signed a multi-million-dollar contract, well, the owner signed a much bigger contract when he was able to chip off. He gave him a tip of a $500 million. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as I look at all the rave of a Negro athlete signing a multi-million-dollar contract, Charlton, I look at that as a distraction through the media to try to take everybody's mind, especially the Negro mind, off the atrocities and problems that go on in America. They want to sit there and celebrate and give congratulatories to that athlete that has that $500 million contract, that has that $400 million contract, which is great for that athlete and his family. They have generational wealth. They don't have to worry about anything the rest of their lives, the rest of humanity, Charlton. But look at the layman person who is on the street who will never have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
As a society, you need to find a way to put wealth into all Americans' hands, not leave them left out thinking that those athletes, well, those African Americans are going to be happy the rest of their lives because Negro got $500 million. We have Negro billionaires in this country. We have multi-million Negro millionaires in this country.
Yeah.
But you have to find a way unilaterally put wealth in every American's hands, not just the Negro, even the downtrodden white people in this country, Charlton. You have to find a way to level the playing field. And if you level the playing field economically in this country, Charlton, you eliminate racism. Because now everybody is on the same plane, and you don't have people playing the crab in the bucket game, where I'm trying to pull you down so I can get ahead. When equality comes to America, we eliminate a lot of racism and a lot of violence in this country.
Yeah, it's going to take good people, Big C. It will always take good people. NFL Fritz Pollard's Alliance, they're asking the league to investigate the Rooney Rule, the process of the Washington team. Now they just call the Washington team. And it's just like what would the National Negro League founder, Rube Foster, think about the Rooney Rule, Big C? I know people have a fear of opening their own business. They have a fear of a lot of things. Some people are just they live and die afraid, Big C. Their whole life they're afraid of everything. But when you think about the Rooney Rule, I think the only thing that really helps men and women is when you own what you do. You got to own it, like Tyler Perry says. Quit playing. Don't complain about not getting a job in Hollywood. There's enough black talent to have your own studios. Tyler Perry is one person. There's NFL owners and athletes that have as much money as Tyler Perry and a lot more combined, but they're okay with the status quo only, Big C. This Fritz Pollard rule, what does it mean? Your thoughts?
What is the Fritz Pollard rule, Charlton? It's no different than the Rudy Johnson rule. It's the guys in the room where it happens. The door is closed. That's all it is. If Rudy Johnson can get away with what he's gotten away with, what does the Rooney Rule mean?
It's just lip service. It's just lip service, and I really appreciate anybody that looks at what they can do in their own life to make things better. Black ownership in pro sports matters. It matters in business. It matters in entertainment, and it matters in life. Reuben Foster was a vanguard. He made no excuses, Big C, and he didn't beg people for anything. He just went out and made it happen, even though he faced a lot of discrimination. I want to finish with two quick story since we're talking about money. And congratulations, Major League Baseball, throwing out the first pitch tonight. NFL football, Big C. Dallas Cowboys, their top pick, CeeDee Lamb. He signs a small contract in today's world. They only gave him $14 million, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's the normal go for a mid-round draft pick. You got to realize the number one overall draft pick, Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, he's going to come in at probably around $31 million, Charlton. So everything escalates down from the point that you were picked in the draft.
Yeah, and then Denver Broncos, they got Jerry Jeudy, came out of Alabama. He signs a $15 million contract. When you think about what baseball players are signing, you might think, man, I should have learned how to hit a baseball instead, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not attractive, especially to Negro young athletes in America, Charlton. They're all steering towards basketball and football because of the glamour that's given to the game on television. They all got these posters up on the wall. I know when I was growing up, we were in love with baseball. All you needed was three guys, and you had a game going across the street. So those days are gone, Charlton, as far as the attraction of young Negro athletes. And you think about so many of them growing up in inner cities where you don't have the fields to play in, but they will build a basketball court. And I've seen guys play football in the street on asphalt.
Yeah, I've seen guys playing the same thing. All fair level war. It's about enjoying opening day, Major League Baseball, if you can enjoy it. I hope players stay safe. And I know everybody has their own thoughts about is it healthy or not. They're willing to put people out there. I don't see any owners running around the bases, Big C, but it's all fair level war. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble, Big C. What are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, if Roger Goodell really meant what he said when he made an apology and saying that Black Lives Matter and the league was wrong in its actions 4 years ago with Colin Kaepernick, how can he allow Woody Johnson to stay in ownership in the NFL with his misogynist thoughts and actions and racial overtones that he has constantly used over the years? It is time for the league to stand up, and if you really want to be the National Football League, eliminate racism within your own. And once again, I want to say thank you, and all our prayers are with the frontline healthcare workers, nurses, doctors, first responders. Please stay safe in toward time with COVID-19.
Everybody stay safe. Do the best you can. Wash your hands and wash your hands and wash your hands every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide. You can follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.